The times when you could buy the second house, rent it out and make good money on it are gone. The main reason to that is because the government realized that this is how many people were making money, so they introduced a lot of new taxes that made it very difficult to be a landlord. On top of that, there are many people who understand that this is how the investment into property works, so they tried to do the same. That's why nowadays when you see a good house for sale, the price of this house is most probably not very attractive, and if it is, there are a lot of other investors who are looking for the same sort of deals, so you end up taking a part in a competition which is very unfair for you if you are a beginner. But it doesn't mean that it is completely impossible to make money on property nowadays. And in this video I'm going to tell you how to make money on property and how to find a good investment property, because it is still possible even in 2021, at least in the UK. So keep watching this video if you want to know the answers to these questions. Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anastasia, and on this channel I talk about investing, and especially investing for beginners. This video in particular will be about investing into property. I bought my first buy-to-let property only recently, and it's a great deal. I also made a very good profit on my residential house that I bought a year ago. That's why I feel like I am in the position to be able to talk about things like that. I've never taken a course about property investment, because those people obviously do it for money, and I feel like they are trying to make it sound like it's super easy to be a landlord, to find a cheap property, and in general to make money on property. I don't think that any property that offers you a good return on investment is going to be passive or easy to come across. So in this video I'm going to share with you some practical things that you have to understand, because to buy any house that you see, even if you have a lot of cash saved, it doesn't make any sense, because the return that you are going to get is not attractive at all. You might as well just start investing into stocks and shares, buying ETFs for example, having a better return and spending much less time and effort on these investments. Okay, so the first thing that you have to understand is, as I've already said, not every property is a good investment property. So how to understand that the property is good for investment? First of all, it has to be a property which you can add some value to. Most of the time, if you are looking to buy a house to rent, buying a new built house, for example, doesn't make any sense, because with the new built houses, as soon as you move in, the value of this house goes down. New built houses, new built property, is usually more expensive than the property that was already lived in. Of course, if you buy a new built house and you don't intend to sell it anytime soon, then over the course of 10 or 20 years your capital will probably see some appreciation, because this is what the property market is known for. It's very stable and the price of property is growing, usually at a faster rate than the inflation. But if you are looking for higher returns, then new built property is not the way to go. You have to find a property where you can add some value. How can you add this value to a property? For example, you can refurb a house. You can buy a house in a bad condition and turn it into a house in a good condition. Or you can add an extra room. You can split one big room into two by adding a wall in the middle, or you can convert a garage or a loft into a living space. These are the most standard ways of how you can add some value. The best investment property for you will depend on the strategy that you are going to use. There are different strategies, and to give you a good explanation of each strategy, I'd have to make a separate video for each one. But the strategy that I'm using is called BRRR. This is the strategy when you buy a house, you refurb it, then you rent it and you refinance it. I chose this strategy because with this strategy I get to keep the house. The other similar strategy is called flip. You flip the house when you buy it, you refurb it, and then you sell it on for a profit. This is a similar strategy, but the only difference is that you don't tend to keep the house. And the amount of work and effort that goes into this strategy is as big as the amount of work and effort that goes in my strategy. So I prefer to hold on to the asset once I invested so much time, money and effort into it, rather than to just sell it on. So comparing only these two strategies, the amount of money that I'm going to spend on a refurb is probably higher than the amount of money that people who are going to flip their houses will spend on them, because they want to do it as fast as possible and for as little money as possible to be able to sell it on, get the cash and buy the next house. Whilst in my strategy, I want to spend a little bit more money on the refurb, but make sure that I don't have to touch this house again to make this investment as passive as possible. Therefore, when using my strategy, because of this difference in the refurbishment price, most probably I will be willing to pay a little bit less money initially for the house than those investors who are using the flip strategy. So as you can see, the actual investment property is going to be very different depending on the strategies that you are using. But there are several rules that are common for everybody. The simplest rule is that you should try not to buy the most expensive house on the street. Ideally, you want to buy the cheapest house on the street, because most probably it will be much easier for you to add value to a property that is the cheapest on the street. With the most expensive house on the street, it will be hard for the evaluator or for your future buyers to justify the price that you will want them to pay or value your house at in the future. The next rule is don't use your emotions. Don't use any emotions at all. It is different to when you buy a house that you are going to reside in yourself. If you buy a property just as a pure investment, then all you have to care about is numbers. The numbers have to look good to you. The return on investment has to look good for you. If you come to the house and you start saying, I don't like the color, I don't like the shape, I don't like the fact that the garden is facing the north and not the south, it's wrong. Don't do that, because you will most probably find someone who will come to the same house and who will like the shape, who will like the color, and they might even like the fact that the garden is facing the north and not the south, although I don't know many people like that. But theoretically they exist. We're all different and we all have different tastes. So at the end of the day, it is going to be the same house with a garden and with the same number of rooms. This is what you have to pay attention at. At the end of the day, it is a detached 3-bedroom house or a semi-detached 3-bedroom house. The rest doesn't matter. And the third rule, you always make money when you purchase a house. So you must try to buy a house below the market value. The market value is what the house actually is worth. It's not the price that you are prepared to pay for this house, because for some people, say if they want to live in this exact location, or if they want to live in this exact house because they love it so much, they would be prepared to pay more money for this house that it is actually worth. So they'd be able to pay the price that is above the market value for a certain property. You, as an investor, you should be looking for the deals that are listed for below the market value. How to understand what a market value of the house is? The easiest way, and my favorite way, is by using the Rightmove. You can easily find the other similar houses that were sold, preferably in the last year, on the same street or within 0.1 mile of the property that you are interested in. You also have to look for similar houses. If the house next door was sold for a certain amount of money, but it's a completely different type of property, it doesn't make any sense to compare your house to that one. What I mean is, if your house is, say, a 3-bedroom semi-detached, then you have to look for other 3-bedroom semi-detached houses. If your house has a parking, or if it has a garage, all these things, they will affect the end value of your property. Okay, so now the question is, where and how do we find property below the market value? This is the most difficult question. They do come up on the market, but they get snapped up straight away. The main place where the majority of houses are sold below the market value is auctions. The reason to that is that because the majority of houses that are sold at an auction are in a very bad condition. Most of them have some structural problems, and you will have to spend a lot of money and time to get it to a good standard. So when you come to an auction, when you see the houses that you are interested in at an auction, you have to ask yourself a question: what is wrong with the house that the vendor decided to run the risk of getting less money and putting his property at an auction rather than trying to sell it in a more traditional way through an estate agency? And if you are a beginner investor, then of course your risks of not knowing something, not paying attention at some little details, and getting yourself into a trouble by buying a property through an auction are much higher. The undervalued property also come up through estate agencies, and you can find them on Rightmove. It's not very common and it doesn't happen too often, but it does happen. The problem is that when it does happen, your competition will be huge. There will be a lot of other investors, and the biggest problem that I had to face is that you have to compete with builders. Builders are constantly looking for houses that need some work done on them. And obviously builders can do it at the cost of the material, whilst you, if you don't know what you are doing, you have to hire a builder, you have to pay the builder. So it is very hard to compete with builders. Most of the time you will be able to win this competition if you are lucky, or if you are prepared to spend much more time and effort than them. Unless the house needs a lot of work done on it before it reaches the market value, the second reason of why the house may be sold below the market value is if the vendor is in a hurry to sell this house. Unfortunately, you don't get any access to this information unless you are friendly with your estate agent, so you cannot really count on that. Anyway, I hope you got the main idea that I was trying to share with you in this video. The main idea was that not every property is a good investment, but at the same time it is still possible to make money on property, and I mean good money, good return on investment of over 25%. It is still possible to do it in the UK in 2021. If you are not from the UK, I guess the rules might be a little bit different, but they will be more or less the same anyway. I think these things that I'm sharing in this video, they can be implemented in the majority of developed countries of the world nowadays, for sure. Okay, so thank you very much guys for watching this video today. Thank you for taking your time and watching it to the very end. I hope to see you soon in my next videos. Thank you very much. Bye bye.